Hello, everybody. We will start the stream in a second. I'm just going to give everybody a couple of minutes to jump in, and we will get started. Let me see here if I can get my new background. Maybe it won't let me put my new background in because it's not a JPEG. No, I guess it won't. But hey, everybody. I hope you had a good week. This probably won't be a super long. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to change this background with the newer one. There we go. Yeah, I just really like this art of Melania, the blade of Mikola, and I have never tasted defeat. Let's see. Just gonna put her down. Is that below the chat? Where is the chat box? Is it not? Okay, I don't know. We'll see soon enough. Hopefully that'll start populating. Um, so we'll get into everything in a bit. Hopefully this won't be a super long stream. I know I always say that, and it winds up being a super long stream. I guess maybe just as a bit of house cleaning. So I've rather than actually do work at my job, I have been putting together some new. I've been playing around with AI, and I've been coming up with some new. I have a new avatar you might have noticed, new channel art, and I'm making thumbnail templates for the individual video series. So let me see if I can find the geopolitics one that I've been working on. So yeah, that's what the. Okay, I have to. So that's going to be the new geopolitical one. Um, that's the new geopolitics one. Uh, Although this one's also, I kind of like the this one as well. Maybe I'll switch between the two. Uh, Also like that one. I don't know. People can tell me if they like the right or the left more. We'll get into the actual stream in a bit. I'm just looking through these. I'm just waiting for giving people a chance to show up. So that'll be that new one. I think I'm gonna use this one for history videos. I'm gonna to crop that out. I think that'd look. It's kind of cute. By the way, somebody mentioned it. I just want to like be clear once again. I'm not a furry. I just like cute animals. Um, I like cute animals, uh, like cats and dogs and stuff like that, and rodents and geckos and just cute animals of all different kinds. Um, I'm kind of like surprised how good the AI art is. So I don't know if you can see, but this is the new. I typed in Gray Espion Catholic, I think, and that's what it gave me. So that's my new avatar, which I think looks pretty good actually. AI art is actually surprisingly good. So we'll get into that in a second. Yeah, birds are fine. Birds can be cute. But yeah, I always worry that people think my avatar is like a furry thing. I just think Espion's cute because it's a cat. It's like a cat fox. I mean, look at him; he's adorable. Anyway, so we're gonna a couple bit of other bits of house cleaning. I think this one is going to be the new. Unless I get something better, I might use this one for reaction reviews. It kind of looks like uh, like a standby or like something you'd see in Bioshock, like a please wait. But we'll go through it and we'll take a look at it. So we'll get to the article in a minute. So a couple people have been asking me, and I answer this question a lot, but I might as well talk to it again. Um, my avatar isn't Espeon. What does that mean? No, it isn't Espeon. I don't know what he's talking about. So people were asking, why do I always seem to take Russia's side in everything? Why is it that I only believe sources that are favorable towards Russia, and I don't believe sources that are favorable towards? Um, oh, you're right. It is an EV. Oh, oh well, whatever. It's close enough. Yeah. Well, maybe I don't know. Anyways, sorry. Okay, we're just. I'm not going to look at chat for a little bit. So, where were we? Right. So people are asking me, why do I always seem to believe everything Russia says? Why do I not ever give Ukraine the benefit of the doubt? Why do I give Russia the benefit of the doubt in all situations? Why do I shit on everything Ukraine does? Okay, so firstly and foremostly, that is actually not true. There's been numerous times, particularly early on, when I didn't give Russia the benefit of the doubt. I said the beginning was an embarrassment. Their performance was really poor. Um, I thought that they were gonna like I thought the sanctions were gonna do a lot of damage to Russia. I wasn't sure if their weapon systems were advanced enough to really go up against the Western ones. Um, the I maybe I didn't explain it very well at the time, but like during the Wagner coup, a lot of people on the pro Russia side were saying, "Oh, this is just one big G slur up by Putin. He's doing this to like find out who the traitors are to get rid of political opposition." I don't think I said that. I think I might have said that was one of the possibilities, but I don't think that was what happened. I think that was deeply embarrassing for Russia. I also thought that the spring offensive was going to go better than it did, and it was kind of a disaster. But the thing is, firstly, if you look at the sources I use, I'm not sure if I ever use pro Russian sources. Um, very, very rarely. I don't know if I might have used Russia Today or TASS like once, and I used it because it had uh, a quote because sometimes they will post like Putin interviews or other things that the Western media doesn't cover, and it's just the only place I can find that kind of thing. But no, generally speaking, so the difference between Russian and Western propaganda is Russian propaganda is they just spew like as many things as they possibly can and hope that something sticks. Western propaganda tends to be more factually accurate, but they spin it. Like, I thought a good example, and I covered this in my last video, was that New York Times article where it said the war was a stalemate and Ukraine made incremental progress in its offensive. But then, if you actually read the article, it showed that they actually lost net territory, despite it being a stalemate or whatever it is they want to cover it. So there's that aspect of it. It's also, in my honest opinion, looking at the data, I tend to base my decisions on that more than anything else. So if you look at a lot of stuff from Western media, the qualitative and quantitative analysis does not align. Like if you notice, I generally whenever I talk about things like shell production or missile production or casualties or something like that, I will give a source. Like it sometimes it'll even be the White House. Um, However, if you like read the article itself will say like Russia's losing, Russia's out of weapons, something or other, but then like the hard data within it. Once again, when if we're looking at the lead up into the the spring offensive, the people were saying that Russia is going to break through. No, sorry, Ukraine's going to break through. They're going to take Crimea. They're going to reach the Sea of Azov. The whole thing is just going to collapse. It's going to be an unmitigated disaster for Russia. It's completely and totally over. And that's not an exaggeration. That's what people were saying at the time. Let's see. Not sure if this is too. We'll try this. And none of that happened. Um, Absolutely none of that happened. So, and it's like, so if people want to say like, partially it's if I seem really pro Russia, it's because the Western media is so psychotically anti Russia to the point they'll just deny like reality. Um, when it comes to, I asked AI to generate me a Catholic Canadian flag, and it came up with this. I actually have no idea what the Latin text says, but I just think it looks cool. So we'll just keep that up for the moment. Um, like once again, and then I think some people were posting like that I was biased because I did that video a couple days ago about the casualty totals, and it was like Russia's killed a similar number of civilians to Hamas, sorry, to Israel, and it's like, but that's not me saying that. That's a UN report, and if you want to say the UN report is fake, okay, that's fine, but it's not like I'm referencing RT. It's not like I'm taking that from like some random blogger on Telegram. That's like an actual source. I don't know if the UN would be biased towards Russia or biased against Russia, but it's that is what an official report from the UN says, that Russia has killed approximately 10,000 civilians since the start of the war. And that's just kind of the way it is. And a lot of it is just that's kind of how it's going. Also, once again, if you read the qualitative statements where they talk about how the war is going, it says one thing. If you look at the reports of the situation on the ground, it looks very different. Um, there's also the issue where a lot of the narrative that we keep getting fed collapses like a couple months later. Like the counteroffensive narrative collapsed. The well, both counteroffensives collapsed. The Ghost of Kiev turned out to be bullshit. All this other stuff happened. So I hope that kind of explains it. There, and I say this once again in pretty much every video I make. There is an immense amount of fog of war. We only kind of have the most vague idea of what's happening. What I try to do, generally speaking, is I try to take um, sources. I try to take contradictory information from sources that are biased in the opposite direction. So if like New York Times reports that Russia's outproducing the US in terms of artillery shells, I tend to believe that because it's against the New York Times's political agenda to admit to that. So that tends to be where I go. If I legit thought that Russia was losing the war and Ukraine was winning, I would report on that. That's good. Tonight I'm drinking President's Choice sparkling ginger ale. President's Choice put out like a line of sparkling beverages flavored like pop. So there's like a ginger ale one, a cola one, a cream soda one, stuff like that. They're actually really good. They're not sweetened either. It's just flavoring and carbonated water. So it's kind of nice. I drink a lot of sparkling water. It's yeah. So this is the article that we're going to be talking about, or we'll get to it in a minute. There's a couple I want to go through. This is I have not read this yet, but I heard that this is like one of the most snakish articles ever written. That this is just full mask off, them throwing Zelensky under the bus, saying he's crazy, saying he's delusional, saying that he's like a threat to Ukraine and he has to be removed from office. That is what I have heard so far on what this article is. So we're going to take a look at it, and we're going to see are is time, who made Zelensky their man of the year last year, throwing him under the bus. I have heard rumors that the U.S. and I did a video about this a while back, how like the snakening is going to be blaming Zelensky for everything that went wrong over the course of this war, and pretending that like no one like Bush wasn't no like none of the other people had any responsibility for any of the things that happened. So let's go into this. I no like I it's the same thing with right wing media. I don't really believe anything right wing media says, because like the whole election thing was such a black pill. Well, and I mentioned this like pretty much every video on it, but I'll mention it again. Um, the whole election thing was such a like a massive black pill, with how much of a disaster. Like there was once again there was the commandos are capturing the voting machines in Germany, and there's a no fly zone, and there's going to be a coup, and all this other like insane shit was happening, and none of it actually happened, and it was just a mess. So that being said, let's get into this. Nobody believes in our victory like I do. Inside Zelensky's struggle to keep Ukraine in the fight. Look at this. He looks unhinged in this. It's Jover. Harry Reid looking more and more like a turtle the older he gets. Chuck Schumer really living up to his name. He's scary. Who is this asshole with the dyed hair? I don't know. Anyways, let's go into this. I don't know how to get rid of this. We're just going to have to live with it. In the words of the late, the great Barack Obama, yes, we can. The invitation to his speech at the National Archives in Washington had gone out to several hundred guests, including congressional leaders and top officials from the Biden administration. Billed as the main event of his visit in late September, it would give him a chance to inspire U.S. support against Russia with the kind of oratory the world has come to expect from Ukraine's wartime president. It did not go as planned. So we're setting up the snakening right now. They're trying to lower expectations. They're trying to say this speech sucked. Zelensky shouldn't have come there. And a big part of this, I think, is the deep selfishness on Zelensky's part and the anti-Semitism once again, for the claim that Ukraine is suffering while Israel exists. But let's keep going. Bill is the main event. Okay, let's see here. That afternoon, Zelensky's meetings at the White House and the Pentagon delayed him by more than an hour. When he finally arrived to begin his speech at 6:41, he looked distant and agitated. He relied on his wife, Lady Elena Zelenska, to carry his message of resilience on the stage beside him, while his own delivery felt stilted, as though he wanted to get it over with. At one point, while handing out medals after the speech, he urged the organizer to hurry things along. No, no, it's not Harry Reid. No, I'm getting them mixed up. No, it's not. What's his name? I can't believe like it's the similar. No, it's no Harry Reid's dead. Mitch McConnell, that's his name. Mitch McConnell. They're all the same. You're right. It's not Harry. Um, let's see here. The reason, he later said, was the exhaustion he felt that night, not only from the demands of leadership during the war, but also the persistent need to convince his allies that, with their help, Ukraine can win. Nobody believes in our victory like I do. Nobody. Zelensky told Time in an interview after his trip. Instilling that belief in his allies, he said, takes all your power, your energy, you understand? It takes so much of everything. Okay, so already this article is like grade A, just them snaking on him. It's them trying to set him up as being irrational, tired, um, like delusional, that he's trying to basically grift. Is and maybe people in the chat can tell me if it's unfair. They're trying to make him sound like a grifter who's coming like hat in hand. Please, sir, can I have some more? Nobody believes in our victory like I do. Nobody. It's been nearly 2 years. Russia still controls a fifth of Ukraine's territory. Tens of thousands have been killed. Global support for war is shrinking. The lonely fight of Zelensky. What a hit piece. And this is Time who made him Man of the Year. Remember, as long as it takes. Remember, if this war goes on for decades, we're going to support Ukraine. Remember all that shit? Well, apparently that was all fake. And I don't think anyone's really surprised to see that that was all fake. But wow. And once again, this undermines the narrative we've been saying. Like, what was didn't they tell us that Russia took back all of Ukraine's territory? No, sorry, that Ukraine took back all the territory, that Russia was on the run. I thought hundreds of thousands of Russians had died. I thought this was a genocide. I thought tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of Ukrainian civilians had died. But I guess not. I guess the narrative has changed now. It's not that Russia only controls a fifth of Ukraine's territory, it's that they still control a fifth of Ukraine's territory. See, there's a big difference here because we're changing it from it's pathetic that they only control a fifth to yeah, we're in trouble because they're controlling a fifth of it. Um, the snakening. It's only getting harder. 20 months into the war, about a fifth of Ukraine's territory remains under Russian occupation. Tens of thousands of soldiers and civilians have been killed. I guess they're referring to soldiers have been killed. But if tens of thousands of soldiers and civilians, that means it isn't in the hundreds of thousands. That means like all the shit we've heard about Russia they have not killed 100,000 civilians yet. Maybe that's just me reading too much into it, but yeah. By the way, I've never pretended that Russia like hasn't done horrific damage to Ukraine. I don't think I've ever said that. If anything, I remember being very critical about how they were shooting Ukraine's energy infrastructure in the middle of a cold winter. But whatever. So the level of international, let's see here. The scariest thing is that part of the world got used to war in Ukraine. He said, exhaustion with the war rolls along like a wave. You see it in the United States and Europe, and we see that as soon as they start to get a little tired, it becomes like a show to them. I can't watch this rerun for the 10th time. It's like I can't watch this Marvel movie. Once again, we are like once again, I call it the Ukraine cinematic universe like as a joke, but isn't that kind of what Zelensky is saying here? That like people are tired of them releasing the same Marvel movie over and over again, and they want to watch something else. They want to watch the Israeli cinematic universe. So, and once again, what does this say about the American people? And what does this say about Europe? That the population are such massive like cucks that it's like we like nothing's being asked of them really except for some money and them having to hear about it. It's like them going. I'm just trying to think how to describe. What was I saying? And I lost my train of thought there. Oh yeah, it's just we have to hear about the Russo-Ukraine war on the news like once a day. The suffering of having to hear about something, even though none of our troops are fighting, it's hard, man. It's hard. I want more of the Kardashians. The Kardashians are only getting 80% of the time they're getting previously because I have to watch this stuff about the Ukraine war. I mean, it was fun to wave the flags around, but it's just kind of getting boring. It's like we only did three Iron Man movies, and Iron Man is played out now. So we need a new superhero. We need Bebe to replace Zelensky as the new hero of the current cinematic universe. And these people are just all so unserious. It's like it's as long as it takes, guys. As long as it takes. It's I don't know. Let's see here. Okay. Public support for Ukraine. Oh no, actually, you're right. Okay, I was looking at the comments. You're right. It has, but it's not really the reason people tend to give. But it is accurate what Constantine is saying that Europe has suffered massive economic consequences of boycotting, sanctioning Russia, and eliminating their source of energy. Let's see here. Some 41% of Americans want Congress to provide more weapons to Kiev, down from the 75% in June when Ukraine began a major counteroffensive, according to a Reuters survey taken shortly after Zelensky's departure. That offensive has proceeded at an excruciating pace and with enormous losses. That's not what they were saying a couple weeks ago. Am I high for thinking that they were saying that it was a success? That like shit was going real well, that like they were winning, like they were making gradual progress. I don't know. Maybe I just hallucinated all of that. Making it okay. Making it even more. Also, we were hearing that Russia was taking heavier casualties. I never heard that Ukraine was taking heavy casualties from this war. Like that's another thing. Just some of the stuff like the Western media says is just retarded. Like the one that I never got is the idea that like Russia outguns them 5 to 10 to 1 when it comes to artillery, and the Russian soldiers are in trenches and bunkers behind minefields with air support, and somehow they're taking heavier casualties. It's just not like that. Just I don't know if that's ever happened in human history. Something like that. Let's see here. With the outbreak of war in Israel, even keeping the world's attention on Ukraine has become a major challenge. Isn't democracy beautiful? Isn't democracy just the most beautiful system of government where, like, the media cycle just controls literally everything? After his visit to Washington, Time followed the president and his team back to Kiev, hoping to understand how they would react to the signals they had received. Despite the insistent calls for Zelensky to fight corruption inside his government and the fading enthusiasm for war with no end in sight, on my first day in Kiev, I asked one of the members of his circle how the president was feeling. The response came without a second's hesitation: angry. The usual spark of his optimism, his sense of humor, his tendency to liven up a meeting in the war room with a bit of banter or a bawdy joke. None of that has survived into the second year of all out war. Now he walks in, gets the updates, gives the orders, and walks out, says one longtime member of his team. Another one tells us, most of all, that Zelensky feels betrayed by his Western allies. They have left him without the means to win the war, only the means to survive it. I don't even know if they've looked at that. Once again, this is not me. This is what Time Magazine is saying. Um, this is Time. So are we going to say that Time is a pro-Russia shill? Like is Time a Russian propaganda outlet when they literally are saying we're out of options? They're saying that like they're calling Zelensky has a messianic complex and he deludes himself. Um, okay, but despite his conviction, but his convictions haven't changed. Despite the recent setbacks on the battlefield, he does not intend to give up fighting or to sue for any kind of peace. On the contrary, he believes in Ukraine's ultimate victory over Russia has hardened into a form that worries some of his advisors. It is immovable, verging on the messianic. He deludes himself, one of his closest aides tells me in frustration. We're out of options, we're not winning, but try telling him that. Does anyone remember like a couple months back where they had the the summit in Riyadh where they didn't invite uh they didn't invite Russia and they had the big peace conference. Um and then they're like that's like the only peace deal we can have is if like Ukraine negotiates with the US, and there could be no peace deals, there could be nothing. And it's just like once again, like this was like 2 or 3 months ago. Like was I hallucinating? Yeah, peace in Ukraine. 30 countries gather together. The US put this on. And they were like we like Russia was not invited. was not invited to the meeting. So America literally, like a couple months before that this article was written, tried to have a unilateral peace deal, and now they're like saying Zelensky is insane for following what they told him to do. Zelensky's stubbornness, some of his aides say, has hurt their team's efforts to come up with a new strategy and new message. As they have debated the future of the war, one issue has remained taboo: the possibility of negotiating a peace deal with the Russians. Judging by recent surveys, most Ukrainians would reject such a move, especially if it entailed the loss of any occupied territory. I mean, that's like, once again, it's this is what like Biden has been saying. This is what the EU's been saying. This is what NATO's been saying. Like they've been telling Zelensky this. Like, don't worry, guys. Don't worry, Zelensky. We're gonna get you more guns. We're gonna get you more ammunition. We're gonna stay with you until the end. And then Israel happened, and they're just like, now they're trying to portray him as like being insane. Like, remember last year or even like 6 months ago when all of this, these same traits, his stubbornness, his unwillingness to compromise, were viewed as being a good thing? Anybody remember the Zelensky peace formula that everyone was promoting? No, all that stuff has just been completely memory hold. Zelensky remains dead set against even a temporary truce. For us, it would mean leaving this wound open for future generations, the president tells me. It's funny that like America is talking about this when they've categorically, maybe they've changed their minds since the last couple days, but they categorically denied having any kind of a truce in Gaza for humanitarian reasons. For now, he's intent on winning the war on Ukrainian terms, and he is shifting tactics to achieve that. Aware that the flow of Western arms could dry up over time, the Ukrainians have ramped up production of drones and missiles, which they have used to attack Russian supply routes, command centers, and ammunition depots far behind enemy lines. I mean, the expectation, like it's just it's not possible. It's Ukraine doesn't have an air force. It doesn't have a functional air defense system. Any industry they build will immediately get hit by cruise missiles or glide bombs. It's this is like the thing that the West has tried to come up with as like part of throwing Zelensky under the bus. Is they're like, oh no, Ukraine can build its own weapons. All this aid wasn't necessary. None of this really mattered this whole time. Ukraine is just going to build all of its own weapons. Israel can't build its own weapons, but Ukraine can. And like Hamas doesn't have an air force. Hamas doesn't have ballistic missiles. Hamas doesn't have tanks or like any of this stuff. But Israel is incapable of producing its own weapons. However, Ukraine, which has been completely destroyed by this, has can't produce its own weapons. That makes sense. The Russians have responded with more bombing raids against civilians, more missile strikes against the infrastructure that Ukraine will need to heat homes and keep the lights on throughout the winter. Zelensky describes it as a war of wills, and he fears if the Russians are not stopped in Ukraine, the fight will spread beyond its borders. I've long lived with this fear. He says a third world war could start in Ukraine, continue in Israel, because they're the same conflict for some reason, and then move on to Asia and then explode elsewhere. Help Ukraine stop the war before it spreads and before it's too late. He worries his audience has stopped paying attention. I mean, they have stopped paying attention. It's not the current thing anymore, Zelensky. You thought that any of this like stuff these people said was sincere? You thought they sincerely cared about the Ukrainian people or cared about your cause or your nation's independence? No, it's the West is run on the basis of virtue signaling. It was convenient to them to virtue signal for you, but you can't compete with the Holocaust narrative. The Holodomor is like we can't even talk about that because it sounds kind of like Holocaust, and you're taking attention away from Israel, and it's not the current thing. Let me just take a look at the chat and see what people are saying. Okay. Uh, maybe I'm reading too much from like Times flagship article. Okay, let's just read. I'm just gonna read through this. Whole country being ruined because of Zelensky's ego. I mean, that's literally what this article says. Um, okay. Zelensky owns every Cabela's in Ukraine. Could it be that cocaine is a hell of the drug? Let's see here. Are you saying Ukraine can't shoot missiles down? I never said that. If you can find where I said that, I said they don't have an adequate amount of air defenses to shoot down everything Russia throws at them. Russia doesn't have the air defenses to shoot down everything Ukraine throws at them, but it's not nearly as much. It's not nearly as much. Uh, it's they don't have an air force. I mean, if someone in the chat wants to argue that Ukraine has an air force that's equal to Russia, I'm gonna need a citation on that. I'm gonna need a citation on that one. Um, so Froggy, I'm kind of confused. So you're getting like angry at me for shitting on America for abandoning Ukraine. So what I'm talking about how they like lied to Ukraine, led it down the garden path, and they're snaking on them. But that makes me a Russia shill, I guess. I don't know. Let's see here. At the end of last year, during his previous visit to Washington, Zelensky received a hero's welcome. Yeah, anybody remember that? The White House sent a U.S. Air Force jet to pick him up in eastern Poland a few days before Christmas, and with an escort from a NATO supply plane. Bleh, joint sessions of Congress to declare that Ukraine had defeated Russia in the battle for mines of the world. That reminds me, does anyone remember this? What was his name again?
10 days from now,
Anyone remember this from 8 months ago?
when
Russia has
brutally,
lost the war.
illegally, and in a
Remember
completely
when that happened? It's okay, guys. We're turning the corner. Let's see. A few right wing Republicans refuse to stand or applaud for Zelensky. Let's see here. Assistance to Ukraine has become a sticky point in debate over the federal budget. One of Zelensky's foreign policy advisors urged him to call off the trip in September, warning the atmosphere was too fraught. Congressional leaders declined to let Zelensky deliver a public address on Capitol Hill. His aides tried to arrange an in person appearance for him on Fox News. In an interview with him on Oprah Winfrey, neither of them came through. That's really sad. Once again, like, you can say what you want about Zelensky, but I do feel bad for him the way that they snaked on him. Um, like all these people were worshiping him, like 6 months ago, and now when stuff gets kind of hard, they're just like, we're just gonna throw him under the bus. So let's see. Ted Cruz was 20 minutes late for the meeting. Um, if we don't get aid, what happens? Zelensky recalls. What happens if we lose? Zelensky's performance led a deep impression on some of the lawmakers present. Angus King, an independent from Maine, he's not an independent, recalled the Ukrainian leader telling the audience, "You're giving money, we're giving our lives, but it's not enough." 10 days later, Congress passed a bill to temporarily avert a government shutdown. It included no assistance for Ukraine. By the time Zelensky returned to Kiev, the cold of the early fall had taken hold, and his aides rushed to prepare for the second winter of the invasion. Russian attacks on Ukraine's infrastructure have damaged power stations and parts of the electricity grid, leaving it potentially unable to meet spikes in demand when the temperature drops. Yeah, and I said this last year. It is probably the shittiest thing that Russia's done over the course of this conflict is some of the stuff they've done to the infrastructure, especially when you're in a place as cold as Ukraine. The theory I've heard is that Russia's goal was to deplete Ukraine's limited supply of air defense missiles by shooting targets that it had to try to defend, but I'm not exactly sure. Last year, people blamed the Russians. One of them said this time they'll blame us for not doing enough to prepare. Well, there's nothing the U.S. can do to help out with this. as long as it takes. The cold will also make military advances more difficult, locking down the front lines until at least spring. I don't know about that. Um, if anything, it might make advances easier. I mean, we talked about the Russian winter offensive last year and it didn't happen. It might happen this time, but until it actually starts, I'm not going to really say. Let's see here. Um, a major shakeup in the president's team. At least one minister would need to be fired, along with a senior general in charge of the counteroffensive, who in no way can be Zelensky, who's being set up to be Zelensky's successor. Um, does anyone remember Zelensky? He was the dude who Politico and Dutch intelligence said was behind blowing up Nord Stream, and the CIA said was behind blowing up Nord Stream. So he's going to be the new head of Ukraine. Maybe, who knows? We're not moving forward, says one of Zelensky's close aides. Some frontline commanders, he continues, had begun refusing orders to advance even when they came directly from the office of the president. They just want to sit in the trenches and hold the line, he says. But we can't win a war that way. Yeah, but the counteroffensive was a disaster. So, like, what is it that they want? Because they tried that and it was a shit show. Um, I think this article is trying to conjure up like images of Hitler at the end of World War II, like in his bunker, completely delusional, talking about how he still can, like, here's how Germany can still win, um, and stuff like that, and just the military commanders aren't even listening to him anymore. When I raised these claims with a senior military officer, he said that some commanders have little choice in second guessing orders from the top. At one point in early October, he said that the political leadership in Kiev demanded an operation to retake a city the Russians have held and fiercely defended for nearly a decade. The answer came back in the form of a question: with what? We don't have the men or weapons, says the officer. Where are the weapons? Where is the artillery? Where are the new recruits? That sounds like pro Russian propaganda to me. Everyone knows that there's no shortages. There's no shortages whatsoever. That's what we were told like 3 months ago. In some branches of the military, the shortage of personnel has become even more dire than the deficit in arms and ammunition. One of Zelensky's close aides tells us that even if the U.S. and its allies come through with all the weapons they pledged, we don't have the men to use them. But I was told that it's like a conspiracy theory that Ukraine's having manpower problems. It's a conspiracy theory that they're low on ammunition. It's a conspiracy theory that they're low on weapons. That's what we were told. I'm just going to take a look at the chat. Uh, okay. Uh, just seeing here. Um, yeah, I don't know. I don't like. Once again, I don't think I'm being unfair here. Like, this is a really like bad hit piece on him. Since the start of the invasion, Ukraine has refused to release official counts of dead and wounded. You know what this sounds like? This sounds like the Duran wrote this article. It sounds like Alex Christoforou and Alexander Makiris, or like Brian Berletic, or Jeffrey Sachs, or Defense Politics Asia, or history legends, or like any of it. Sounds like one of the guys wrote this because this is literally the talking points they've been using for like the last year, and these were all things that were denied and were said that it was a conspiracy. um weren't they claiming that like Ukraine only lost like 20, 30,000 people? Now they're saying the toll has long surpassed 100,000 on each side of the war. It has eroded the ranks of Ukraine's armed forces so badly that draft officers have forced to call up even older personnel, raising the average age of a soldier in Ukraine to around 43 years. They're grown men now, and they aren't that healthy to begin with. This is Ukraine, not Scandinavia. Yeah, health is not. Eastern Europe is not exactly a picture of health between the drug usage, the alcoholism, and the various diseases. The mass mobilization was fueled in part uh, optimistic predictions of some senior officials that the war could be won in months, if not weeks. Many people thought they could sign up for a quick tour and take part in a heroic victory, says the second member of the president's team. As conscription efforts have intensified around the country, stories are spreading on social media of draft officers pulling men off trains and buses and sending them to the front. Literally, history legends did a. Let me look this up. I'm pretty sure military history legends. History legends. He did a video on this. Literally, I think it was in. Okay, where is it? Um, trying to find it. Like back in February, I think. Yeah, okay. So 6 months ago, he did an article. He did a video called "Ukraine is running out of soldiers," which basically had like word for word the talking points in this. So yeah. Okay. Now recruitment is way down. Okay. August. Yeah. The other issue is just there's massive amounts of corruption. So a lot of people bribe their way out of service, often by paying for a medical exemption from a corrupt doctor. Uh, and Zelensky fired the heads of the draft office in every region of the country. I think he sent them all to the front line. Let's see here. The move backfired. Recruitment ground to a halt without leadership. Nobody wants this job. It's like putting a sign on your back that says corrupt. It's like being a tax collector in the New Testament. Nobody likes you. The issue of corruption has strained Zelensky's relationship with many of his allies ahead of his visit to Washington. The White House prepared a list of anti corruption reforms for Ukraine. Once again, this was all denied like 6 months ago. They said that this was insane, that this was pro Russia shills who were saying this. And I've always stated that Russia is one of the most corrupt countries in the world, but Ukraine is like a corrupt country that's also anarchic, and it's just there's no strong leadership. They were conditioned. Also, if Ukraine's so corrupt, like we're gonna see this the narrative, um yeah, the narrative that we're seeing now is Hunter Biden wasn't involved in corruption and criminal activities in Ukraine, but the government was super corrupt. So it's like, which is it? I don't know. To address the American concerns, Zelensky took some dramatic steps. In early September, he fired his Minister of Defense, Reznikov, a member of his inner circle who had come under scrutiny over corruption in his ministry. No shit. He failed to keep order with his ministry, pointing to the inflated prices the ministry paid for supplies, such as winter coats for soldiers and eggs to keep them fed. Let's see here. President gave strict orders to his staff: don't buy anything, don't take any vacations, just sit at your desk, be quiet, and work. Bureaucratic paralysis and low stuff. The typical salary in the president's office comes to about $1,000 per month, or 1,500, far less than they can make in the private sector. Wow. We sleep in rooms that are 2 by 3 meters, about the size of a prison cell, referring to the bunker that Zelensky and a few of his confidants have called home since the start of the invasion. We're not out here living the high life, he tells me in his office. All day, every day, we are busy fighting this war. Like, we're even talking about the bunker now. We're literally like saying Zelensky's in his bunker with like his closest advisors sleeping in prison cells, and like this is the end. This is like Hitler in the bunker. Yeah. Amid all the pressure to root out the corruption, I assume perhaps naively that officials in Ukraine, let's see, people are stealing like there's no tomorrow. It's corrupt, guys. It's super duper corrupt. Even the firing of the defense minister did not make officials feel any fear, he adds, because the purge took too long to materialize. The president was warned in February that the corruption had grown rife inside the ministry, but he dithered for 6 more months, giving his allies multiple chances to deal with the problems quietly or explain them away. Reznikov's eggs, the reputation damage was done. When I asked Zelensky about the problem, he acknowledged its gravity and threat it poses to Ukraine's morale and relationships with foreign partners. Fighting corruption, he assures me, is among my top priorities. Let's see here. So, I'm just going. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit just because this is a very long article. Uh, Brushing the front of his sweater. Explain that we are clean. Just the corruption stuff. Thing about Hamas. From the earliest days of the Russian invasion, Zelensky's top priority and perhaps his main contribution to the nation's defense has been to keep attention on Ukraine and to rally the democratic world to its cause. Both tasks will be a lot harder with the outbreak of the war in Israel. The focus of Ukraine's allies in the US and Europe and of the global media quickly shifted to the Gaza Strip. I love when the media is like it's just something that happened. It's not like that we're the ones who switched the focus. It's just the way it is. Um, let's see here. He asked to visit their country to make it about him, and they said it's not right. So Biden bundled all the aid together, uh, and trying to pass all the aid in like a bundle is what wound up bringing down McCarthy. And the Democrats were retarded on the whole thing. If they had just all abstained in the vote to oust him, he would still be speaker. They would have passed with bipartisan support the $105 billion for Ukraine, and we wouldn't be having this conversation. Arguments about our shared values no longer have much sway over American politicians or the people who elect them. People is like that, he said with a tired smile. They weigh their own interests. At the start of the Russian invasion, Zelensky's mission was to maintain the sympathy of humankind. Oh, that's cringe. Oh, of mankind. Now his task is more complicated. Pay dividends. Achieving this gets harder as costs multiply. So this is the Time Magazine hit piece. It is part of the Snakening. As they prepare to blame everything on Zelensky and throw him under the bus. I mean, it's pretty obvious that from the beginning of this, the U.S. was like deciding on military strategy. Like, I don't know if anyone remembers when that whole NATO meeting happened. Biden was like, "You got to take X amount of territory before this date. If you don't, we can't help you, Zelensky. You got to go do it. You got to go do all this other stuff." So that's pretty much where we're at the moment. Um, Time, one of the biggest, if not the biggest, flagship publications, has written this hit piece on him. There's no way they didn't do this without the approval of Washington, without NATO and the deep state and all those people giving them signing off on this. I heard that Zelensky's chief of staff or one of his interns actually published this article on his Twitter, and because they hadn't read it and they just assumed it would be positive. But then it turned out it wasn't positive, and it was kind of a disaster. So That's about all I want to do. I just wanted to go through this because I just wanted. I think this is the like most clear example that the snakening has begun, and that they're going to be trying to get rid of. They're going to try to, I don't know, do something to get rid of Zelensky, or they're just going to abandon Ukraine altogether. So let's look at the chat. Let's see. Froggy says that the author was born in Moscow in 1989. I wonder how much dirt the Russians have on him. Because Time magazine is known for its pro Russian sympathies, and nobody there would object or attempt to stop a dude from writing a pro Russia article. That would not have happened. The strangest irony, okay. This is beyond a signal flare or a water balloon. The snakening, I love terms like that. So, did anybody have any questions or anything? If not, I'll cut the stream here, as I think we covered everything I wanted to cover. So, any comments before we go? Going. Speak now or forever hold your peace. Okay. Well, good night, everybody. God bless. In the words of the great Canadian philosopher